set this up for you though before I run through and show you how to make a split. So I've got 2 deep boxes here, both full of bees and brood. You just saw that. I've got an empty box here. I've pulled the center 5 frames out of it. So I've got a feeder. It had 8 frames in a feeder. I pulled the empty 5 frames out. So I'm anticipating that I'm going to end up with three hives out of this one. So I'm going to leave 3 frames of brood on the bottom box. I'm going to have 3 frames of brood in the second box, and I'm going to have 3 frames of brood in the top box, assuming I find, 9 frames of brood. And so I'm going to set this up with 3 frames of brood in the middle of each one of those boxes, a frame of honey on both sides of those 3 frames of brood, and then empty frames on the outside of that. Because we're going to do this one fast, I'm not going to bother looking for the queen, but I am going to shake all the bees down into the bottom box so that I know the queen is in there, and I'm going to put a queen excluder underneath the bottom box, as you're going to see. And that's going to assure me that, hey, I know where the queen is. She's got to be in that bottom box. So, and then after we're done, we're going to let this hive sit stacked up until tonight. And then after all the bees move back up through that queen excluder and cover all the brood and equalize bee populations, then I'll take the top 2 boxes away and leave them in the same bee yard or move them to a different bee yard. And those will be my 2 new splits. And then what's left will be my very bottom box with the queen excluder on top. And I know my queen is down below. So I know my 2 top boxes, those are the ones that I need to move and add queens to my bottom box, because I shook all the bees down during the process like you're about to see, and put a queen excluder on top of that bottom box. I know that she's down below. So let's see if we can do this. Somebody can start the timer and see if we can do this in under 3 minutes. So the first thing I do is I give them some smoke. I usually start at the second frame, because usually the outside frame is just honey. And I pull out the second frame. I see that it's just honey. Yep, see? We just have a frame of honey. I shake the bees off of it. I'm going to put it in my empty box over here to the outside. So that's one of the 2 frames of honey I need. I'm going to go to the next frame, shake the bees off. It's mostly a frame of honey. I've got a little bit of brood inside of it, but it's pretty much a frame of honey. I'm going to put it on the outside of, again, this empty box over here. So now I've got my 2 frames of honey. There's a frame of brood. So it's got a lot of eggs and larvae. You may not be able to see it, but it's a frame of brood. So that's 1 frame of brood over here in my box. There's a beautiful frame of eggs and larvae. You may not be able to see it, but that's a frame of eggs and larvae. That's my second frame of brood. Another frame of eggs and larvae. That's my 3rd frame of brood. So now this box is good to go. It's got 3 frames of brood in the middle, a frame of honey on each outside. Now we're going to replicate that process with what's left. So now in this next box, the next frame, again, beautiful frame of brood, eggs, larvae, and cat brood. I'm going to set this aside. And then the last frame on this side, just honey. So I've got another frame of honey. Again, I'm going to set it aside. Now the last frame still down in this box, that outside frame, just a frame of honey. Shake the bees off, just a frame of honey. So I'm going to set it aside. Now I've got an empty box. So my second box is now empty. I've shaken the bees out of it. I'm going to set it aside. So I've got my bottom box. It's still full of brood. I've got this frame of honey that I set aside. It goes up here into my second box. Another frame of honey that I set aside goes into my second box. I have 1 leftover frame of brood. It's going in the middle. And then I'm putting some empty frames that don't have anything on them on the outsides. So In my second box here, I've got 2 frames of honey, 1 frame of brood. So I need 2 more frames of brood in this second box. So down below here, I'm looking for at least 2 frames of brood, and I need to leave them 3 frames of brood. So I'm hoping there's at least 5 frames of brood in the bottom box. So here's 1 frame of brood of eggs and larvae. So now I'm up to 2 in this box. And here's my third, another frame of brood. So now I've got 3 frames of brood. And I've still got 3 frames of brood down here in this bottom box. So I'm going to center, I'm centering those frames of brood in the bottom box. I'm making sure they've got honey on the outsides of those. And then I'm putting my empty frames that don't have anything on them outside those frames of honey. So all my bees are still in the bottom box. I've got my queen excluder, putting it on top of that bottom box. And now I'm adding these boxes that we set up on top of that queen excluder. 1, 2. Lid back on. Sits till tonight. All done.